See, it was quick that time. There's a voice coming from behind the TV set. He kind of whacked the TV set. Like, what's wrong with this? Who remembers a TV set? Fancy logo. We actually had a TV set as from OE Global. We had the flash icons, the flash people. We're going live. We're live right now. And the all important attribution. I love Kevin MacLeod's It's So Music. So good music. Welcome, everybody. This is Alan Levine, and I have everybody and their books for our new OEWeek live session. This, again, are just informal, unstructured conversations with interesting people. And I'm really pleased to have friends and colleagues. And I said, will you just come on and talk to me? And it was so great to have you come here to do this. So I really want to, it's like to make a transition, from work you've done for a long time and to move into, a new phase of life is a big thing. And so I'm really glad that I can ask Maren Deepwell how it's going.
Hi, Alan. Hi, everybody. Yeah, I am 6 months away from my past job as CEO of the Association for Learning Technology, but I'm glad to say that I'm still kind of able to keep up with friends and colleagues from that wonderful community. And obviously, they also celebrate Open Education Week this week. But most of my work at the moment is being around open course design. And one of these, which was all about hybrid working, was with Reclaim Hosting, which is where I've been having lots of other fun and open source and open platforms and tools in the last couple of months. So things are going well. The dog walks are continuing, and so does the blogging.
That's really good. I was trying to Martin, did I hear something about you maybe retired? I was trying to play that really didn't work out well, so I apologize.
No, it's an interesting point. I think it's something all three of us have in common, isn't it? We're kind of in different phases of our careers. Yeah.
Yes. So how is well? First of all, say hello. Let us know where you're from and what is your phase.
So hi everyone, I'm Martin Weller. I work at the Open University, and I lead the GoGN project. And I live in Cardiff. Hello, Jim Groom, listening from Trento, Italy. And I'm going to leave the OU, the Open University, in June after 29 years. So I'm going out into the big wide world. And I don't know what I'm going to do yet. I've got a redundancy payment. They were offering like one of these generous redundancy schemes. So that'll keep me in money for a year, 18 months anyway, even if I do nothing. So it's nice to have that kind of space to kind of think, what is it I want to do, and not to have your calendar fill up with meetings that just seem to go round and round. I think when you've been at somewhere for so long, the same things keep coming around, and I've become that guy who sits in meetings and goes, "Oh, we're not doing this again." I don't want to be that guy, It's like, so it's time to go, I think, when you're doing that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, when you say 30 years, that's quite a run, and much to be said about that, and of course, much to write about it, as you have done and probably will do. Have you been? I've been following Tony Bates's series of posts about his he was there from the beginning, and and I'm in awe of Tony and his ability to sort of be real and also have done so much.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I did shortly after the 25 years of EdTech, I did a 25 years OU, and I've been at the OU for 25 years. And it's quite a nice way to do it. I've been enjoying Tony's series. It's kind of using your blog as a kind of autobiography. It's your blog, isn't it? If you're being self-indulgent, who cares? It's my blog. You can do what you want on it. So that's always my attitude.
And he's true to the blog. I left him a comment, and then he just sent me an email. It's like, it's very interesting. And so we also have, maybe we should just ask what's on your bookshelf, but Anne-Marie Scott coming in from Scotland. And so great to see you, Anne-Marie. What's swimming around in your universe these days?
Well, like Maren and soon to be Martin, I made a big change last year, left Athabasca University, and I've been freelancing since August. Carried a few commitments I already had to Open Source Software Foundations on. And what's been lovely is having, I don't get paid for that work, but having the time to do that work and kind of being able to, patch in paid work and figure out a different rhythm and a different phase and put a lot more time and effort into open stuff than, you can when, as Martin said, you're in a day scheduled full of meetings where you're just, maybe slightly groaning at what you're hearing. And your point there, Martin, about hearing the same things come round again or seeing the same things come round again. I sent the opening chapter of Your 25 Years of Ed Tech to a colleague at Apereo recently who was on a bit of a rant about, why do we keep forgetting our history in education? It was like, I know a man who wrote a book about that, and that was even in his introduction. I sent it on to him. So,
okay, well, I'm going to break the train of thought because I believe I see OERCamp has showed up on stage. I hope I'm putting them on camera. I hope Jöran is out there, and you're live right now, Jöran. So currently going on in Hamburg is this a live event happening all about OER, and it looks like, well, we may be getting them in the pre-stage, so Alan's just so excited to bring in. But Jöran had offered to do a little live dispatch from OERCamp, and we will wait and eagerly. So, again, this is of course, what happens when you say, oh, we'll just do live and anything can happen. Of course, I learned all this kind of excitement of doing this from the DS106 DS106 radio days, and still I like when you went to a conference and just like said we're on the radio, it just generated a lot of activity, and I always liked that. And I don't have to tell you people because you know this.
I was just gonna say, I think we're definitely up for radio. And Anne-Marie and I were talking about sort of open source tools and platforms just on Friday, weren't we, Anne-Marie? And we were talking about Reclaim Radio as well, but also kind of how much that sort of informality is important to continue the advocacy. So I thought, I was just looking back at that recording, and Anne-Marie, I thought you made such a good point around sort of what's next in open education, and there's always more people to reach in different ways.
I still think the radio thing is underutilized. I keep saying to people, you could run radio station. It's kind of really nice it's a kind of low cost way of connecting that. So I know Maren, when she's working with Reclaim, sometimes they've got Reclaim Radio going just for the people who work there, and you'll just be like vinyl casting because someone very thoughtfully bought Maren a record player for Christmas. So it's like whatever she's listening to, she's also vinyl casting, and that's quite cool. Then you're working with people, and what's this? So I've been trying to promote it a bit with GoGen as well. We've got a big enough community now. People could just have GoGen Radio going, and that'd be cool. Oh, Jonathan's here.
I mean,
he's in the wrong place. I'll do it. Jonathan, look in your email. I'll send you the link to come inside the studio.
Your point about radio there, Martin, there's a few thoughts pinging off in my head. Dave Corbier's book about abundance has just popped into my head. That radio is used in education, extensively in education, but in places where it's low bandwidth and low tech. It's, we are blessed and cursed by an abundance of technologies as well as information, and something that is, trailing edge like radio maybe doesn't get the usage in our domains that we'd like to see, but it is such a super powerful tool. We're it's taken long enough to get people convinced that podcasts might be a useful delivery mechanism for education, but I've been really interested in some of the ideas around degrowth and constraints thinking in the last year or so, and partly that's spending time at a resource poor institution for a few years. You have to get creative. You have to embrace those constraints as a generative thing, not a punishment. And when you do, all sorts of really cool stuff like radio pops out. we could learn a lot, I think, from looking at other domains and other places.
And to be honest, sorry, like what we're doing here, like it's great to see you, but like I don't know, the power of a voice conversation, because then what you like in terms of like doing radio shows, when of course learning that with DS-106 is like it's so much more that you can generate when you ask your listeners to sort of create the visuals themselves.
And just to add to that as well, I think that constraints thinking goes kind of into different dimensions as well. Like this is where I think the DS-106 example, which is education focused, is so strong. But I'll come back to that, Philip, because I can see Jöran's just ready. Hi, Jöran.
Greetings, Jöran.
Hi, I hope you can hear me. I'm so awfully sorry that we are late. We had, of course, a Wi-Fi crash at the beginning of the event.
Hey, whenever you can make it is good. This is so exciting. So where you're outside the venue right now? What's going on there?
Yes, because we changed from Wi-Fi to cellular because we have approximately, 200 people accessing the Wi-Fi at the same time, and that didn't make it fast. So I'm just really, really happy that I can be here with you for a few minutes. I don't want to interrupt your discussion. I'm awfully sorry that I can't be really a part of it, but I just wanted to say hi and say all the greetings from the German OER community. You can't see them now, but we actually took a picture. I hope I can show it to you.
That's good. So tell us a little bit about OERCamp.
Yes, I will. We'll try this really basic technology of showing a picture into the camera. I don't know if it works.
Look at that. Yeah.
This is where we were like 30 minutes ago, opening the OERCamp 2024. And the OER camps are basically a bar camp, and the bar camp is an unconference. So there's not really a program and a program team, but people coming together and building their own program. And this is in Hamburg for the third time now, I think. The first OER camp was like 12 years ago, and since then we had different events, most of them like peer-to-peer learning style. And today we have 200 people here. We hoping for a bit more, but we have a huge strike and airports are closed and railway stations are down. But many people made it, and they are really in the style of peer-to-peer learning, creating their own programs, learning with each other, learning from each other. And this is really great because we as the hosts of the events do not have to do much more than building a framework which they can rely on. And then it's really amazing to see these people building the OER community together.
So what kind of activities are going on at camp today?
Right now there are workshops, and they are from different communities. Today they are really long workshops, I think like 4 hours each. And probably this is no surprise to you, but the biggest workshop is the one on AI and OER.
Surprise, right? So what kind of things are people doing with AI and OER there? Are they...
Yes, I think it's really diverse. We have some people that are really into the legal issues, which I really admire for their sticking to those questions, because things are evolving so fast. And I don't know why, but the German debates really have a strong emphasis on the legal issues. But many are discussing how not only they can use AI as a tool for creating OER or making OER accessible, but really how to make AI itself open. This is really a huge debate this year on OERCamp.
Yeah, and everywhere else. Anne-Marie, I definitely would like to hear you chime in.
Well, I was just going to say that's a fascinating topic, Jöran. It's something that the conference might be interested in the work of the open source initiative, because that's something we are actively working on just now to define, in the same way as we have a definition of what open source software is, we're working to define what open source AI is. And I recognize that conversation about legal issues. It's a very deep and complicated legal conversation because an AI system is not one thing. Like a piece of software is one thing, or an OER artifact can be one or maybe a couple of things. An AI system is many things with many different legal documents implicit in that. It's a really complex conversation. Yeah, I'm glad to hear it's a topic because I think it's fundamental to underpinning shareable AI in the way that we have shareable OERs today.
Yeah, I think really it's fundamental in the sense of the word. So we don't know what will happen within the next years, but I think it's really 2024 is a time where we have to discuss the fundamental questions.
Yeah, and are there some like activities going on outside of camp, like some extracurricular activities going on in Hamburg?
I'm not so sure because people just arrived, and OERCamps mostly are about surprises, and we thought people would go to the workshops, but most of them, I don't know, drinking coffees and having one-on-one discussions. But this is a feature, not a bug, so we would say probably.
That's all good.
And tonight we have a discussion with the Bündnis Freie Bildung, which is our alliance for open education, and they have prepared, I think, like 10 ideas for the next 10 years of OER and open education. So this is more like a grassroots approach. And at the same time, the event is sponsored by our federal government, which has for 2 years, there has been an OER strategy, which is really exciting because Germany was not always like in the fast lane for OER and education. And I hope this strategy really helps the community to bring things forward, to really push OER into structures. And grassroots is really, really important. I think it's the key, but it's not only the grassroots that can really change education in their structures.
Yeah, well, commendable that the government is investing in it. You know, it seems to be bucking the trend in many other places of the world. And so kudos to Germany for recognizing that. And so what do you get to do during OER camp? Do you get to be part of everything?
The organizer team is mostly just really about like building a fundamental framework. And so next morning, which is Thursday morning, we will have like a planning hour, and we don't know what will happen then. Just to give you an example, like the last OERCamp, which was 2022, had like 64 sessions for one day driven by the community. So we start really with a blank template, and then people come forward and they just say, my name is Jöran, I would like to discuss, I don't know, how to build an open AI. And people go to these sessions, and like 64 sessions, you can imagine these are like, I don't know, I think we have 5 hours in the schedule. So 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 or even more sessions at the same time. So there are really, really intense discussions going on. And on Friday, we have just the opposite. We have 4 hours for long time sessions. So people working really on materials or building, I don't know, paper with a position on AI and open education. And this year is very much not only on AI, because I mentioned it now, I don't know, like 10 times. It's also very much about open educational practices, which is, fortunately, a term that is really prominent in the German OER strategy. So it's not only about the legal issues, the tech issues, the, I don't know, infrastructure issues, but it's really also about the pedagogical approach.
I really commend you for running this format. I really am trying to convince some of my colleagues to think beyond packing a conference agenda with presentations. You need time to be able to work and to have these important conversations. And then you know, you've kind of, this is coming to a face-to-face gathering after doing online. That must have been tremendous.
Yes, it really is. And we're really enjoying some of the parts which we used to think of as really just like a byproduct of the meetings. The people coming together and having, I don't know, great discussions over coffee. We pay so much more attention on little things like the music playing when people are coming in is really much more important than we thought like 5 years ago.
Yeah, and where where do you have birds chirping when you're in a Zoom room? Come on.
This event this year, it's in a school. I don't know if you can see it. There are buildings all around us.
Okay.
And cannot see one of all the wonderful people just now right here, but it's a beautiful school. It's a vocational school. It's specialized on media and communication, and which is beautiful that this is not like an event on an outside place, but there are real students going on and out during the event, and real teachers working here while we are here having this event.
Well, take note. You don't get that at a conference center.
That's true.
Well, I thank you so much for taking time out to come in. Jöran.
Thank you.
And so it's great to catch up, and I just we all applaud the work that you're doing there.
Thank you so much. I hope to see you all soon.
Okay. Take care.
Bye.
All right, wasn't that great? So we had spontaneous, and then welcome to the room, good friend and colleague Jonathan Worth. Jonathan, you're missing some bookshelves behind you, but say hello.
Yeah, I'm feeling intimidated. I haven't got. I don't own any of that knowledge. No. Yeah, hey, it's lovely to be here. Sorry, I was knocking on the door outside for ages, and but it sounded great. I really enjoyed listening to you guys talk about radio, and Joe, I feel exactly the same. I was echoing sort of that the intimacy of it, getting inside someone's ears. It's the only thing I can liken to it is reading a book, right? And it's and building that sort of trust instantly is massively valuable when sort of dealing with students and so on. So I think it's something I'm really keen to leverage right now. Very, very exciting, and thanks for having me.
Good. So tell us about the work that you're doing now, and what you're most interested in.
So I'm at Nottingham Trent University. I've just written some 2 new degree courses and a master's for them. And it's about, Trent's got an amazing history for photography. I think it was the first degree course in the country, or the second school, or I'm not sure. But anyway, it's got a real heritage. And I got the chance to my pitch was to rethink what photography might be. And I pitched that, amongst other things, that we're at a moment where photographers for the first time are able to photograph the future, which I think is incredibly exciting. And then that's people sort of usually balk at that, And then we've just running a class at the minute called Sensor Informed Storytelling, where we work with people in the fashion courses where they've made smart fabrics that can tell you if you're going to fall over. So socks, literally socks, to tell you, generally sort of older people if they're going to fall over. And then we're working with the sports school as well, who've got computers that you put inside you and into your sort of gum shields and so on that tell you what your internal organs are going to do when you fall over, right? So our photographers, if they do 3D capture of the subject, and this is the other exciting thing, for photographers now, we don't have to think about 2D all the time now. We can think about 3D and immersion and things like that. So if you've got a 3D scan of a person, and the socks tell you they're about to fall over, we know what's going to happen to their internal organs, so we can actually create that image of what's about to happen. So ostensibly photographing the future, which I think that's the most exciting thing, because I haven't thought it all the way through yet. And but it's fun just designing sort of learning experiences around it where we all get in there and learn something. So that's happening in one of the courses, which is a sports photography course, which is the first in the world. That's going to launch in September. Very pleased about that. And we've got a fashion photography course launching as well, which is a very different beast as well, very collaborative, very creative. And we've got the age-old traditional photography course as well, which still values sort of crafting artifacts that can't be digitized. So that's what I'm doing at the minute. But something I thought of you immediately, Alan. I thought of all the conversations we used to have around things like copyright and so on. This week, I did a tutorial with a student, and she's a master's student. She's gonna leave soon, and it was about we were talking about what her ideas, what success was for her. We were trying to map it out, and she said to me, she's an illustrator. She said, my idea of success would be if people create fan fiction of my work, right? And I thought, fuck. She's talking about mediated authorship as being defining success. that was so exciting. I thought that was so exciting. It seems like our lives have been sort of banging our heads against the wall, trying to get people to think about mediated and shared ownership of, and building on top of things. You know, science fiction authors talk of standing on the shoulders of giants, don't they? Think of it in terms like that. And here's somebody, the young person, a new generation of people who just lays it out there. I thought that was great. It was really, really exciting. So that's the thing that's exciting me most at the minute. In answer to your question, it's a very long answer to your question, wasn't it?
That's okay. It's just brilliant. Like I know we got to talk recently, and I just enjoy every conversation. Like everybody here, like it's so great to be able to have this. And I know, and maybe I'd like to hear everybody, like the stuff that we're wrestling with, the AI is kind of on this backdrop of this like massive shift in this web that we've all known for a while. And so the grand and shitification, as Cory Doctorow has put it up, which is like, it's like when just saying that word is like, wow, I can say that word. But like, it's like we're getting sucked along with it. And like, I'm curious where people think about the things that we want to do on somewhat of a backdrop of feel like a shifting landscape.
I was interested in Jonathan's sort of, in some ways you've got both ends of the spectrum there with those courses you're creating, Jonathan. So there's one that's kind of like super embedded in the new tech. And you said you also done a kind of classic, you're doing a classical photography where it's like you're creating artifacts that can't be digitized. And in some ways that's really interesting. It's like, I've got to be honest, AI bores the shit out of me, but you can't ignore it. You know what I mean? It's like, even if you're ignoring it, then you're doing something to it. It's like, so I think there's that kind of like, in some ways, the interesting thing about AI and all this tech is it makes us consider what it means to be human, or it makes us kind of reconsider processes. So in education, like we suddenly have to think about, we can't just do essays anymore. But maybe that's not a bad thing to consider. It makes you think, okay, why were we doing essays in the first time? Because we were trying to do this, we were trying to do that. So I think it's interesting, your photography is kind of exactly that. It's like, what are the bits from this that we want to, that are essential in a way that we kind of want to keep and retain, and which are the bits that, no matter how much you might fight against it, are probably going to go, to AI and stuff. So I think it's interesting, I think, for all these kind of different topics, kind of how they're being touched upon, and impacted upon by this tech.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. That I think it's really, you've hit the nail on the head there. Just trying to work out what how this design for the photography courses really roots back to what are business models. What can you sell? What can you make? What can you make precious? And this generation of people will understand ephemera more than anyone, I think. And so the idea of face-to-face experience is massively valuable, and speaks to this idea of building trust, which trust and intimacy, again, sort of concurrent themes. And then the artifact that can't be digitized, the ages that's fixed in time, that becomes hugely valuable, along with all the skills that you need to do it. And but the AI thing, I like you, Martin. I'm sort of I'm not really enamored by the conversations around it. That said, I've seen some incredible prompt engineering, which I know is a new term for me, but some amazing photography that's been done with prompting, and we're teaching it, we're learning it at the minute. It's brilliant. But what again, somebody just mentioned Cory, Alan, didn't you, in shitification and so on, which, where do we all go? Where do we hang out? I really miss you guys. I really miss the conversations that we had. I don't know where to find you. So, I mean, and I'm running classes at the minute. I'm trying to run them like those old open classes I used to run, Phonar and so on. We've got nowhere to share notes, right? We've got a great collaborative room full of people, everyone getting dead excited, and we can't get out of the room. Just can't do it. Anyway, that's another story. That's another story. But the AI, Cory wrote something just recently. I don't know if anyone saw it. Just back in December, he said we said, what sort of bubble is AI? And he talks about other bubbles, .com and so on, and the residue those bubbles left behind. Often very positive things. Engineers after the .com bubble burst. He talks about the fiber bubble, leaving lots of cable and so on around. And I wonder what sort of residue will be left after this, which I thought was really interesting, which then led me on to thinking about COVID and had it been a forced bubble in terms of distance learning and hybrid teaching and learning, because that bubble certainly burst when I came back, right? and I'm not quite sure what the legacy was, because I was really hoping it would be exciting and it would be federated and it would be sort of leveraging the teaching like the web is designed, right? Teaching with the web rather than against it, and it's not what I came back to. And I wonder what your guys' experiences are, because well, how do you reflect on that as well?
All the time.
I'll maybe jump in. Poor Maren had to listen to me rant about this on Friday already, but for the last year I've existed in two separate communities. I've still had a foot in the education community, and I've had a foot in the open source community, in the commercial open source community. And there's a huge disconnect there between the two. There is a vibrant open source technology community. 70 to 90% of the commercial stuff universities buy is made up of open source. I go to these huge open source conferences and see all the big players there and many small ones too. And then I come into education and then people are like, la, it doesn't exist. It does exist. You're buying it packaged up by Microsoft or somebody else. There's a real, I find that disconnect really jarring. That I have the pleasure and the privilege of working across non-Anglophone education spaces too, and I'll pick on France and Germany particularly. You know, the European Union is investing billions of euros in open source software because it wants self-sovereignty of the web, and those education systems are particularly in France, there's a government mandate for open source before anything commercial. So these open tools and the kind of open ecosystem we want to have, they exist in other places. We don't see them because we don't speak other languages. We don't always have the opportunity to look into these spaces. So I'm finding that really hard. And the struggle you just articulated, wanting to do something and the infrastructures to do it, just not being there anymore as public goods. We've lost that concept of our educational digital infrastructure as a public good, and that ability to share. I mean, I have the privilege of doing a little bit of that in Canada with some openly owned infrastructure in one province, but that has the blessing and the curse of being too cheap to be funded easily. I mean, it's easy to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars buying a commercial system, but it's very hard to spend $25,000 a year to keep something that props the entire province up ticking along. So there's some real big challenges in here. And like you, I'm disappointed about the outcome of COVID. We could have been creative and we could have, again, embraced that as a constraint, and we didn't. And I don't want to be unfair to people. I think a lot of people are just plain tired and can't take an awful lot more. It was a hard time, not just in work terms, and it still is a hard time for many. But you're right. We let something go there, and something has slipped away from us. But it's not an impossibility. Other places have it. It is possible to do. I don't know how we do it, except rant on the internet. The best answer I have so far.
I think there was a sense when COVID finished, in whether it's politicians or society, it was like, phew, thank God that's over. Let's all go back to campus. It's like, it'll all be okay. And I think, and maybe that was understandable. It's like you're sort of trying to put it all behind you. But I think they're beginning to see that model doesn't work either. You're seeing all these reports of kind of empty lecture halls, and AI sitting stuff as well. So maybe it'll be like, it will take a bit of time to realize actually that just straight back to campus model, everybody back into the classroom. Let's pretend that stuff didn't happen. Kind of, and it almost went further back the other way, didn't it? Go back to a kind of real obsession with face-to-face. I think, I read all these kind of headlines like universities will be punished if they don't stop online teaching, as if it was like some form of abuse or something. It's like, and I think it swung back that way. But maybe I think there are other things sort of longer term that will make them have to kind of readdress that, I think. So. Maybe Anne-Marie's right. I was going
to say AI's kind of done that as well, though, Martin. I'm thinking about all of the, get back in the classroom and handwrite your essay kind of conversations I've seen as well.
That's the really boring response, isn't it? What should we do? Let's get them back face-to-face exams. It's the only way.
I'm super interested in the contrast between that and what Jonathan was talking about the handcrafted art of photography. Like, why there's different value definitions in there. Why is one old-fashioned way of doing something retrograde, and why is another old-fashioned way of doing something, if I can put it that way, Jonathan, still got value? There's I think that I don't know quite what I'm saying here, but there's something about the humanity in each of those things. There's something I think maybe inhumane about shuffling a whole load of students into a room and making them handwrite an essay, but that doesn't feel productive or generative or creative in the way that maybe generating an artifact like a photograph is. But there's a whole interesting tension in there about us going back to old ways of doing things, and which are useful to us and which are not, and we're really having to think that through really carefully. I don't quite know what
I was in London recently at the Design Museum, and I had escaped the horrible conference, and I just decided to have a morning walking around this museum before my train was going. And it really struck me, because I have a background in art and anthropology, and it really struck me that in a lot of creative disciplines, you don't have that weird dichotomy between digital tools and analog tools. Like even in the late 90s, when I did my art degree, there was nothing wrong with carving marble one day and using a computer the next day. And I'm not quite sure what it is about, or I am quite sure that there are a lot of socioeconomic, political, kind of, cultural norms that somehow make us reinvent this dichotomy between what's in the classroom and what's online, and that qualitative difference. But what I wanted to come back to is also something Jonathan mentioned around this sort of ephemeral. And I kind of think what's really heartening for me is that I see that we are seeing more awareness of people wanting to have their own domain on the web. And I think the sort of omnipresence of being online, I think, makes us appreciate more what we get to keep when social networks that we won't mention here come and go, or with that enshetification that Cory Doctorow talks about, sort of reaching further and further into spheres that we used to kind of co-opt to have those conversations. Now I think there is much more of that return, sort of, where is my space and how do I keep it? And this is one of the things Jim Broom and I were talking about recently around, how can we make sure that people have the skills to keep those spaces theirs and be able to reflect what they're interested in and make that valuable to them. Because that's, I think, the real key here is that, we all have these skills, and lots of people in the chat here are talking about these skills and to empower them to have that space. But that's, I think, something which I'm excited about with open education as well, is that, we do need to push that skills piece and giving people those tools. So I'm sorry, Jonathan, I think we've all talked at you, but it's your fault for being inspiring.
I think this is all an exciting opportunity, isn't it? Because one of the things that we all noticed, I think, under COVID is that there was an opportunity to, or we were forced to sort of to develop things that we showed a sort of interest, a drive, intrinsically motivated to get involved in interest-driven stuff, right? And so my frustration coming back really is that I know there are so many more people that are interested in some of the things in the areas that we all inhabit, right? So mine's photography. I know there's loads more people who are interested in visual storytelling now, and I struggle to find a way to get them into the room, or to let them into the room, right? And that's the thing that I'm struggling with. Designing like the web, designing with the web. That's what I'm referring to, and so I still think there's a great opportunity, but I'm frustrated that I don't have all the tools to be able to do that. But ultimately it is exciting. That was an answer for didn't even require a question. Hey, what about that?
But we know what you're
stick the question in later, Alan. Stick the question in later, mate.
Yes, Jonathan, what would the tools be?
So an aggregator that would harvest conversation. sorry, to go one step back, the tool remains for me a hashtag. Jim Groom once said, "Phonar is just a hashtag." This class we used to teach, which was photography and narrative, and he was absolutely bang on. It was. That's all it was. It was just a hashtag, and it enabled us to aggregate otherwise disaggregated conversations, where the one thing at that moment they were thinking of was this, just photography and narratives, visual storytelling. So the means to aggregate disaggregated conversations around a common theme in a synchronous and asynchronous fashion, so that we can come together at 10 o'clock on a Wednesday, and you don't have to be in the room, you just have to be in an online space where you can aggregate those hashtags, and so that you can also join that conversation. And then you need to be able to sort of aggregate it afterwards as well. So yeah, we did it previously with Twitter, right? So that's what it did, and that's properly enshittified, and so that's no use anymore. And we've all gone into different spaces and places, and I refuse to go anywhere that I can't spark up a Martin Hawksey tags around, right? If the API isn't open, then that's not going to work, because we're going to be held hostage again, just like we were with Twitter. So the tool is that really. I'm talking very specifically about the way that I'm really enjoying teaching again, and I'm finding this a new generation of people in the room who don't have some of the hang-ups previously that we had around, especially around no problem with mediated ownership, which is amazing. They do have other insecurities though, and they have real deep worries that we have to sort of address, not just in the learning design, which has to be around trust and building trust. I appreciate, but also about what we teach as well. So not just how we teach, but what we teach as well. So they're the tools I want. And I think if what those tools must do, I think, is there actually, they have to help build trust at scale. That's it, I think, which speaks to that thing in the beginning, radio, how intimate it is, enabling you to build trust quite quickly. Yeah. Have you got any? You got any of those tools?
Well, I mean, what's going through my head? There's a few thoughts going through my head. I mean, one of them is obviously the Fediverse, in some form, combinations of. There are many ActivityPub enabled tools out there. There is an overhead for sure, and it's a bigger overhead than using Twitter or whatever. But also, what's going through my head, and it's something I'm sure we've all been struggling with, is your point about trust. Some of the comments Tom Woodward's been leaving in the chat about, platforms like Twitter used to be. We learned a lesson there, and the lesson was you can't trust them, and we should have known that already, but we didn't, and we learned that lesson hard, and we're now in different places because we're making different choices about trust, about community, and about ownership and convenience, and they're all trade-offs between those things, and we're in probably multiple places for multiple reasons, and Martin has written very eloquently about some of that decision making, in fact, and why you might be in multiple places for multiple reasons. But your point about trust building, I wonder if we're at a fundamental juncture where the open web is not a place that you can trust. Because, I mean, we talked about AI earlier. Everything we do that is open is subject to some form of monetization, AI and other forms. And so maybe we don't have many choices anymore about, maybe if we want to build trust, we have to invest in slightly more closed spaces, or spaces that have porous boundaries, at least, where there's a bit of control over what you share and what you don't. And we probably, to Marin's point, have to own some of those spaces ourselves. And I come back to something that struck me strongly last year, when Jim when Reclaim Hosting ran up a Mastodon server, and I filed a complaint about some racist abuse to the invisible moderators. Well, turns out the invisible moderator is Jim on a Mastodon server, not like a faceless army of content moderators. And then suddenly I got an email back going, thanks very much, by the way, you've got moderation rights now too. Awesome. If we want these spaces, we have to take on the community building responsibilities ourselves. If we want these spaces to be the kinds of places we remember and the kinds of places we want them to be in the future, we've got to do some of that labor. We can't offshore it and push it out. So There's now a few of us on that Mastodon server who are admins and content moderators, and that is part of community building too, I think. And I'm coming to realize that now, that if you want a shared space and you want it to be what you want it to be, you're going to have to do that work. And I think the prime example of that, I mean, our little Mastodon server is tiny. The prime example of that is Kathleen Fitz and the Humanities Commons spaces, where they've been building out that sharing infrastructure as a community with codes of conduct as open as they can make it, but with some sensible closures as well, and some very light touch gatekeeping. So I think there are tools out there. They're never going to be as easy as they were, and I think that might be okay and that might be necessary now. I don't have much faith in quote unquote the open web anymore. I don't think it's safe.
And I think that's so inspiring. And I was part of that Mastodon experiment with Reclaim, that we, like the one that we ran together with Old, and it was interesting because that community was not prepared to do the community building, because actually so few people were prepared to walk that walk, that the Reclaim server survives, and that's thanks to those folk doing the invisible moderating behind the scenes, keeping it up to date, doing all of that labor. But for a kind of charitable organization that represented thousands of members, that was not a viable option. And I remember at the time we wrote to all these big sector bodies in the UK saying, oh, with your media department of 500 people, would you maybe have one person to run this community? Oh no, but if you would like to set it up and moderate it, we would love to come and join it. And that's the thing that I think sort of drives that narrative that goes against the hopeful narrative that I know, Alan, you featured this week as well, with Catherine Cronin and Laura Chernovich writing about higher education for good. I think I try and not dwell on the what makes me sad, and try and think what makes me hopeful and how can I empower other people in that space. But it is a fine balance. And when I read that Cory Doctorow lecture, I thought, oh yeah, I really feel that, that sort of encroachment of that wave is really strong, isn't it? So, and by the way, for those of you who missed the Martin Hawksey convo about community building, we were chatting with him just a few weeks ago about exactly that, Jonathan. We were like, we miss tags. We miss that. So we didn't talk about phone hour, but we did talk about tags. So if you missed that, I'll send you the link.
Thank you. I'd like to see that. I still show people some of his old clouds, and they're still fresh. People still, when you show them the cloud, and you show how some people have drawn other people in, and some people show more external links, and other people share. There were different ways that people sort of connect people. It's so powerful and interesting, and it's so nice to see how you are rendered by the digital as well. How you affect people and affect conversations, and how your impact on a sort of community is. Yeah,
I always like the tags love. I felt like I was the only one who saw this feature where you could pull up a single person and replay their activity over time, so you can actually watch their connections and what they did. And I always tried to have students include that as part of their portfolio or demonstration of things that they did. And technically, the tag should be doable with the Mastodon API. I feel the same kind of dread and tiredness. At the same time, on a regular basis, I tap into places it's quiet, and so are we kind of consumed by what gets a lot of attention? Because there are a lot of people doing creative, individual, small effort, work. And there's so many things going on that I think we don't see it as much. But I think there is, a thin layer of hope and optimism and old web energy happening out there. And I still believe in it. I'm not ready to give up on it completely.
I've been revisiting my 25 years EdTech. I've been revisiting the podcast, in particular the audiobook and the podcast that Laura Pasquini ran, and it's just to be the kind of moany old man sort of thing again. But Laura asks, at the end of the 90s, there was kind of all this hope and excitement about we can teach online, we can do these things, we can do those things. And Laura asked a really good question, like, did we mess it up? And I sometimes think, did we mess it up? Because I look at where we are now, I think it's not really, that it's probably gone back in many ways in terms of experimentation, in terms of pedagogy and excitement and things you do. It's like, I think it's become so. Maybe that's just what happens. But, okay, we can be positive, Alan. I do think it's difficult though. You're right, there is stuff going on, but I think go to Jonathan's point. So if you wanted to have an open course that anyone would join, then beforehand you would have done that via Twitter. It's like,
yeah.
Now you'd have to go via how many different sites and stuff, and so.
Well, I mean,
you don't have that town hall kind of thing, do you? Where you might suddenly be pulling in, a celebrity or something. It's like it's not that sensitive.
Yeah.
But maybe that's just changed, and it wasn't always going to be the same thing, and maybe you just have to accept that that's happened.
That's true. And on the sadness of enshittification, I wanted to look up your disco blog post, and I typed in my search like Martin Weller disco, quick terms. And the first link that came up was LinkedIn. Like, why did that come up above the source of your blog post? Like, I get there. But it's those things. And every day trying to read something and have to scrape away all these pop-up boxes and go through these jumbles just to read something. That's like enshittification on a regular daily basis. But there's tricks to get around it. And so I kind of, I want to believe in some ingenuity out there. I know that town hall feeling. I still think that was a little bit of an illusion. It never really was. It just worked that way, and it felt like it did, but it really wasn't that complete. And so what would happen was, I would, wherever I run into Jonathan Worth in a different platform, his Jonathanness is there. And with everybody in this room. But yeah, for me, the erosion of the idea of the whole domain of one's own, like just to have that place where you can say or do whatever you want and it's not going to get flushed on you, is still the most valuable thing out there. And we wouldn't be here talking about it without that happening.
If only we knew a good hosting company that could help us with that.
I'll have to get back to you on that one. Oh, this has been so good. And honestly, Jonathan, when you talk about the things that you're doing and what you're getting with the students, I mean, that gives me, hope. So yeah, you can't do the thing where necessarily you hoist that course and all of a sudden people, maybe it just takes longer, or maybe it just takes a different strategy than a hashtag.
Yeah. Well, I came back into teaching last 18 months ago, wasn't it? And I wrote this degree course and then and a master's, and then wrote a class and taught my first class in ages. And I taught it again this year, and it's a mixed discipline master's class, and it's around people's professional futures. And I asked questions that I didn't know the answers to. And I interviewed a series of people that were like pathfinders, totally different disciplines. Couple of names that may have been familiar: Nick Souzanis, now professor of comics at San Francisco University, taught me more about narrative when I stood in one of his pages than I'd ever learned in all my photography. But anyway, but having those conversations recording those conversations in advance, and then having those conversations with the room came alive. There was a massive appetite for it. And the class has had super positive feedback. So I'm sure the dynamics are there. They're just waiting to enable people to join. And I intend to publish everything. I've stuck this early stuff on YouTube, but I'm going to stick it all on archive.org, and I have to make my own site up so that we can have a place, a posse site, right? And that's what I'm teaching the students, posse. So I've got to walk that walk as well. But I'm really excited actually, because because there are different, like I said before, there's different value sets coming, and now I realize that it's this thing about trust, which is so incredibly important. And the conversations that we're having and the way that people are surrendering themselves to this sort of knowledge production mode of teaching and learning versus knowledge transfer tells me that there is an appetite for it. It's all right. It's going to be all right. It's just got to. It's not the end of the story at all. And that question about residue, right? About post-COVID residue. And if the needle swung back again, as you guys are describing, and I empathize with that, I see the same thing. Well, it's going to settle back, right? And maybe when it settles back, it'll be closer to where we were. And I think well, I'm seeing it. I'm not just making it up. I'm seeing it. I'm genuinely sort of being enthused by that. So I'm excited for the future, and I'm intend to put my stuff out there and hope that I can still make those connections again with new people, with new younger people who are going to teach me stuff about mediated authorship and ownership, if nothing else. Yeah, that's all I've got to say. Again, another answer that didn't require a question. Do your job, Alan. Do your job. Ask the question.
I'm trying to do my job by shutting up.
I'm not saying anything else. That's an awkward silence. Awkward silence.
Yeah, no, I was just I think we're all reflecting, but I was gonna say, Alan, I know that some of us are meeting not just online but in person in just a couple of weeks in Ireland, as some of us are fortunate enough to go to Cork to the OER conference, but you're still alive and kicking, Jonathan, and I'm sure a community to reconnect with. But I think these hallway conversations, or bookshelf conversations, as this one has turned out to be, they really kind of make me think about what at the heart of openness is. That conversation is that reflecting together and kind of sharing how we're all getting on. And I think that is what I'm really keen to not delegate to anything else. Like people always because I blog a bit, and people always send me these links like, create your content, just make it happen. And I'm always like it's so pointless for me. I don't get to think through stuff if I have a tool that makes my blog posts for me. So it's just the same as how I don't want a tool to replace these kind of informal things. And Alan, big credit to you for giving us airtime to have this kind of unstructured conversation, because I think we all need a bit of time where we are not under pressure to sit around a meeting room, deliver something on Teams or LinkedIn that's pitch perfect. I really appreciate this space. So a big thank you to you, Alan, for making community building happening right here, right now.
Well, thank you so much. I wanted to ask Maren, it's got to be an interesting perspective to go back to the conference you organized and get to be just a participant, so you don't have to worry about all the logistics. And so I look forward to seeing your smile around and saying I can just go around and connect with people.
Yeah, me too. It's going to be like going on holiday for me. But it's been quite funny because quite a few people have reached out saying, "Oh, I'd love to meet up with you at OER, but you'll be so busy." And I thought, no, I won't be. I'm presenting for 2 15-minute periods, and that's all I'm doing. There was maybe a bit of sort of celebrating, as it's Martin's last OER conference for a while. So, I'm doing a bit of that, but that's it. So, no, I'm very much looking forward to it. And I'm a big fan of the conference, and so I'm very privileged to go this year.
I am too, and I think my first one was 2014, and just it was a refreshing atmosphere, and because of the people and the vibe, and we're still here, and I think there's more people out here who are in their same place, so we have camaraderie. We just have to break out of Teams and whatnot, and Zoom and get into 3D. So wow, thank you all so much. Just warms my heart that I can just put out something and get so many great people in the room and just talk. And I agree. And people have been saying this, we don't do this enough. Get virtually connecting happening again. That was a game changer for me.
Yeah, well, Jim and Meredith and I are organizing a little live session from OER, like a hallway chat at lunchtime on the Thursday. So if you feel like it's not as virtually connecting, but we're hoping to do something. So come and find us.
We're doing a
join in the
GoGN
fun.
drop-in session on Thursday lunchtime as well, so we can.
All the fun is happening.
Because you were spoken about this, but yes.
Yeah. Well, and I have to get prepared. I'm terrified because I had this crazy idea to do a gasta and to do a spoken poetry session. So
Nice.
I'm making a pitch to get federated. Like, I don't know how I'm going to do this, but I want to rally something because I think that's the avenue. I don't know how to do it. It makes my head spin. But I think the Fediverse is like I think Anne-Marie says, I don't want to jump to another thing where I have to deal with what we went through.
So are you coming to OER, Alan, or are you
Yeah.
trying to? You're coming in person. Oh,
I'm going to be there in person. Yes.
Oh, fantastic. Oh, I'm
Yes.
so pleased.
Yeah. My
and you signed up for Gasta with Tom Farrelly, right? I actually recorded Jim's Gasta last year with Tom. Do you need to see this in advance? Do you know what you've done?
No. So yeah, I probably need to watch.
You've not gasted before, have you, Alan? You've not had the Gasta experience before.
I've seen it. It was done in Kamloops for the conference that Maren was at, and I've seen a few. But yeah, I'll get some coaching, Anne-Marie. Okay, I'll sign up.
I've been gasted to Tom did it in Edinburgh for the big Alt conference in 2019 as well. But the bless you, Jim. The Jim and Tom Farrelly combination, brothers from another mother. Those two. That was an epic. So the bar has been set. The bar has been set.
Oh, I know. That's why I'm terrified.
There's also a reason, Alan, why there's no public videos of these. They're not family-friendly affairs when Tom Farrelly hosts in the UK or Ireland. So what stays at Gasta it's usually there. So yeah, it is a one and only experience. I'm looking forward to it.
All right. Well, I can't thank you all enough, friends. Anne-Marie, Maren, Martin, and Jonathan, and Jöran for coming in from OERCamp. And yeah, I'm energized to do more of these, and I'd like to carve out that attention. So everybody give our guest a family friendly goodbye, and I'm going to fade out the stream with a little bit of music, and then thank you, folks. Reclaim, Tom, Jim out there, Meredith on the stream.